Hello, I am Chuck Broerman. I am a member of the El Paso County Republican Party Executive Committee and a member of the State Central Committee. I have served as the El Paso County Party Chairman for 2 terms. I have served 1 term as the State Party Vice Chairman. The critical issue before each of you tonight is why this committee must take action to ensure the integrity of elections in El Paso County. We believe that based on past action, there is no hope for a fair election in the upcoming organizational meeting unless the State Central Committee votes yes today to appoint a neutral chairman to oversee the meeting. The current administration of the El Paso County Republican Party has overseen 3 flawed party elections. The first was in the 2020 County Assembly. Even though the state delegate selections were unopposed and approved, when the current administration provided the state party list of delegates, they removed Congressman Doug Lamborn, State Representative Tim Geithner, and Commissioner Holly Williams from the approved list. The second election, the 2021 organizational meeting, was rife with errors. Many grassroots Republicans were disenfranchised from voting. The State Executive Committee overturned the results of that election and directed for a new election to be held. However, the State Central Committee, hoping that El Paso County could resolve its own issues, chose to permit the flawed election to stand. Unfortunately, the hope that El Paso County could resolve the issues turned out to be overly optimistic. In the third example, the 2022 County Assembly was not just poorly run, it was run illegally, causing a court to overturn the results from that county assembly for illegally adding delegates and overriding the votes of grassroots caucus attendees. 3 elections, 3 failures. This is not just a competency issue, it is also a willful refusal for this administration to be fair. They have refused to provide delegate lists to Republican Party nominees in the primary. And with our county organizational meeting scheduled to take place in 2 weeks, this administration announced that they would not provide the Central Committee list to anyone. The inability to obtain a list of precinct committee people makes it impossible for district chairs to issue calls and for individual campaigns to campaign for party leadership positions. Let me repeat that for emphasis. They have refused to give the list of precinct committee people to the opposition in the race for county party office and bonus members. Is this administration already in the process of determining the outcome of the next election? That's why we need the State Central Committee to step in. Secret list, corrupt election. Add to this administration's recent efforts to defeat our Republican nominees. And to that, I will let Dave Donelson speak to the matter.
The chair now recognizes Dave Donelson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Dave Donelson. I serve on Colorado Springs City Council. I'm an Iraq war veteran, former Army NCO and officer, and Green Beret. I was the Republican nominee for House District 16 in the 22 election. It was one of the closest races in the state. Do I believe the current county chair can be trusted to fairly and impartially conduct our upcoming elections? No. Her unfair and arbitrary actions in censuring me and other Republican nominees 3 days before the 22 election shows the candidates cannot trust her to be fair. The current chair called a special meeting of the County Central Committee on November 5th, 3 days before the election. At that meeting, and to my utter disbelief, I was censured. For what? I still don't know. I did not know this action against me would even be considered at this meeting. It was not mentioned in the call. In her call for that meeting, she said it would be regarding the issue of the Peak Republicans. Since I had never been a member of Peak Republicans, never used their facility for any campaign purposes, never had signs there, never had literature there, I knew this wasn't regarding me or my campaign. In the call, it said nothing about anyone being censured, even potentially. Even though I knew this Peak Republicans issue did not involve me, I replied to the chair's email and politely requested the meeting be delayed until after the election so that television and newspaper reports about party infighting wouldn't harm Republican candidates in close races. I never received a reply back. In fact, I now believe the special meeting was called on the 5th for the intention to damage multiple Republican campaigns. The morning of the meeting, I was at a Veterans Day event and parade. A friend called me from the meeting to ask if I knew that I and many others were being censured. Of course I didn't know, or I would have been there. 3 questions. Number 1, was Was there a worse day to conduct this meeting and censure Republican nominees unless you were trying to damage their campaigns? 2, is it fair to censure a nominee or any Central Committee member without clearly warning them that censure is going to be considered at the meeting and giving them a chance to defend themselves? And finally, does the day chosen, wording of the call, and conduct of the meeting demonstrate a party chair who can be trusted to be fair and impartial in conducting our upcoming elections? Thank you.
Christy, this is Chuck Broerman. Can I finish up?
Yes, you're recognized.
All right. In light of that absurd meeting that Dave and other nominees experienced, the State Executive Committee took action against Vickie Tonkins with the following censure. Vickie Tonkins called a special meeting of her Central Committee 3 days before the 2022 general election for the purpose of censoring 7 Republican candidates who were on the ballot. And Vickie Tonkins flagrantly and intentionally violated her duty as county chairman. And instead of supporting these 7 Republican candidates in the general election, she actively opposed them. The Colorado Republican Committee therefore formally censures Chairwoman Vickie Tonkins for her rejection of her duty to Republican candidates on the ballot in 2022 election. To underscore this administration's dereliction of duty, they recently changed the bonus member pledge to delete the requirement to support party nominees after the primary. Why would a Republican organization, which is the main advocate for our party's candidate, do such a thing? Friends, the El Paso County Republican Party has been the pace setter for Republican votes for statewide candidates. Since 2019, due to poor leadership, the once mighty El Paso County Republican Party struggled to obtain 52% of the vote for statewide candidates. During their leadership, it has driven off 8,666 registered Republicans from the county. This affects Republicans in nearly every one of the state's 64 counties, as does the steady stream of news coverage about the problems in El Paso County Republican Party. Secret lists, corrupt elections, declining membership, actively working to defeat Republican nominees. All we are asking for is a fair election on an even playing field. The only way that this can happen is for State Central Committee to appoint someone else to oversee the El Paso County organizational meeting in February. Former 5th Congressional District Chair Gregory Carson.
Your time has expired.
Okay, thank you. We ask the members of...
All right, and just so everyone is aware, I've been looking at the chat box. I appreciate you writing time in the chat box. We are timing it here. Also, it's taking a few extra seconds to unmute people, so I'm going to give people a little bit of grace and let them go a few seconds over. I'll apply that to everyone equally. Just so everyone knows, we're certainly watching the time here and just giving people a few extra seconds if it took a few seconds to get them unmuted. Also, I'd like to remind everyone of decorum. If you're looking at the chat box, there are a lot of people calling other people liars and making very disparaging comments. Let's not engage in that. I would appreciate everyone actually, and I'm sure most of you are doing this, but actually paying attention to the speaker and considering the issues at hand and not using the chat box to disparage our fellow members. So let's please refrain from that. At this time, the chair will now recognize those who oppose the motion for 7 minutes. And those speakers who are recognized, I'm just going to recognize you both now. And I will ask that the second person be unmuted as soon as the first is done speaking. So if you're the first one speaking, you can go ahead and indicate when you'd like the second person to take over. So the chair will now recognize Devin Daines and Dave Williams for purposes of opposing the motion, and you have 7 minutes as soon as you're unmuted and you start speaking.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to address this committee. Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Devin Daines, and I'm an attorney at Illumin Legal. It's an honor to speak tonight on behalf of our firm's clients, the El Paso County Republican Central Committee, its duly elected chairwoman, Vickie Tonkins, and 6 El Paso County Republican precinct leaders. Make no mistake, our clients are all at risk of removal, at least from the duties of county chairwoman that she was elected to perform, and as properly appointed precinct leaders, depending on tonight's vote. So on behalf of our Republican clients, let me begin by stressing how grateful they are for your sacrifices and the important party work you all do at the state level. For the sake of the values, morals, and policy goals you share as fellow Republicans, they sincerely root for you. We hope that some of those shared values include adherence to the rule of law, maintaining order through respecting the processes and the bylaws, preserving the voters' right to select their own representatives, and honoring each county organization's right to self-governance without undue interference. Because the actions the SEC is considering tonight undermine those values, we respectfully ask you to oppose the motion. As you may know, we filed suit yesterday in Arapahoe County to uphold those values. The case number is 2023 CV 30176. I'll put my email in the chat if you're interested in receiving a copy. Our position is that neither the state statutes, county or state party bylaws, nor any precedent grants the SEC the authority to commandeer county party meetings, elections, or to unseat elected or appointed county officials. Chairwoman Brown, Mr. Murray, and others disagree. The court will ultimately determine whether the SEC's actions are legal. So I want to focus my remarks on the political and practical implications of the motion. Ladies and gentlemen, please consider, even if this proposed action was legal, which we strongly deny, is this the kind of precedent the SEC really wants to set? Here are the facts. We're here tonight because a group of 13 El Paso County Republican voters, the Peak Republicans, wrote a letter to the SEC complaining about and personally attacking Chairwoman Tonkins. One of those voters is Chairwoman Brown's father. Another signer of that letter stated, in fact, it was Mr. Broerman who just spoke, he stated that the goal of this group's effort was to, quote, remove Chairwoman Tonkins from her position and appoint a new Republican organization to represent El Paso County, end quote. Based on those complaints and attacks, they asked the SEC to sideline Chairwoman Tonkins and appoint a neutral party to chair the El Paso County reorganization meeting and to make possible the disqualification of up to 65 El Paso County precinct leaders. Chairwoman Brown invited Chairwoman Tonkins to submit a response to that complaint, which she did, but Chairwoman Brown chose not to distribute it in advance of this meeting. So this body has only seen one side of this coin. The question tonight is whether the SEC really wants to enable GOP voters who may be unhappy with the outcome of their county election or the way the elected officials lead to blatantly disregard the will of the voters in the proper removal channels by asking the SEC to, quote, step in. That is exactly what is happening here, and even if it were lawful, it is a bad idea that will only invite future abuse. Now, as a word of caution, while this special meeting involves El Paso County leadership today, it could just as easily involve your county's leadership tomorrow. Chairwoman Brown recently declared that, quote, whatever decision the SEC makes will stand in El Paso County, end quote. Swap out El Paso for the names of your counties and ask yourselves if you're comfortable allowing that kind of heavy-handed meddling. And to those leaning in favor of these motions who may rationalize their vote by thinking, well, the ends may justify the means in this case, I'd ask you, when did that kind of reasoning ever lead to anything good? The bottom line is this: if people want new county party leaders, they should appeal to the county voters, not the SEC. If people believe their elected county officials should be removed, the removal procedures under the county bylaws should be followed, not those imposed by fiat by the SEC. There are proper political and legal channels for these actions at the county level. The SEC should not ignore them at the request of an unhappy minority. I'll close with two things. First, the words of Chairwoman Brown, quote, we understand and agree that county parties are largely responsible for solving their own issues, end quote. Second, the admission of the 13 El Paso voters, including Mr. Broerman, who complained to the SEC about Chairwoman Tonkins. Quote, we know we should fix this in El Paso, end quote. We agree with both statements. We ask that you please do the right thing tonight by voting against the SEC's unlawful and unwise overreach into El Paso County's politics. Thank you for your time, service, and consideration. I yield the balance of my time to Mr. Williams.
Thank you, and thank you, Madam Chair and members of the State Central Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. For those of you who may not know me, my name is Dave Williams, and I'm a former Republican state representative from El Paso County. El Paso County Republicans object to the purpose of this meeting. As many others have already expressed prior to tonight, we believe this meeting's agenda violates Colorado law and our own party bylaws regarding these kinds of controversies. But what may not be clear is the troubling reason why we're debating this at all. What's clear to us is that the complainants want to maximize their chances by hook or by crook of winning our county party elections next month and retaking control of the party leadership. We know this to be true because of what they're asking you to do and how they've gone about it. As you've already learned, El Paso County has filed suit in Arapahoe Court against the state party and its chairwoman. This was done because we take seriously our right to self-governance. Autonomy and self-governance are at the foundation of our party and certainly our country. The founders were so serious about this, they kicked off a revolution against Great Britain so they could secure our country's right to self-determination through the consent of the governed. With that said, El Paso County will vigorously fight to stop the state party from violating our autonomy and the will of the majority who elected our current leadership, while protecting the voting rights of precinct committee persons who chose to volunteer their time to represent their precincts and make our party stronger as a result. And we ask you to join us in doing the same. Tonight, we ask you to reject this unlawful takeover and attempt to disenfranchise fellow Republicans because of the unsubstantiated false accusations from others that are easily disproved. We are the party of laws and not men. We are a party of order and not mob rule. Might does not make right, and we implore you to not let the state be used as a vehicle to help a small faction within our county orchestrate a coup.
Mr. Williams, your time has expired. Thank you.